Most people don't fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. They fail quietly, slowly, and invisibly, long before anyone else notices. Not because life defeated them, but because they unknowingly poisoned their own progress. And the most dangerous part is this. You can be working hard, staying busy, and even appearing successful, while your mindset is silently canceling everything you're trying to build. Today is not about motivation. This is about survival. Because if you don't recognize the subtle mental habits that destroy momentum, discipline, confidence, and courage, no strategy in the world will save you. By the end of this video, you will be able to identify the exact internal patterns that sabotage success and learn how to dismantle them permanently before they dismantle you. We live in a world that rewards awareness and punishes drift. Nothing in modern life stays neutral for long. You are either improving or declining, building or eroding, advancing or sliding backward. And yet most people think danger looks dramatic. They imagine failure arriving as a single catastrophic event. In reality, failure usually arrives disguised as comfort, hesitation, caution, and familiar thinking patterns that feel safe, but slowly corrode ambition. The biggest threats to your future are rarely external. They live inside your daily attitudes, repeated so often they begin to feel like personality traits rather than choices. One of the earliest and most destructive forms of self-sabotage is indifference. This is not laziness. Indifference is far more dangerous because it wears the mask of calm. It's the attitude that says, "I'm not too bothered," or "I'll see how things go," or "It's not that serious." Indifference feels harmless because it avoids stress, emotion, and risk. But nothing meaningful has ever been built by someone who refused to care deeply. You cannot drift into excellence. You cannot accidentally arrive at fulfillment. Drift only moves downhill, never upward. When you stop caring, you stop climbing. And when you stop climbing, gravity takes over. Many people believe passion should come first and effort should follow. That belief is backwards. Commitment creates clarity, not the other way around. Waiting to feel inspired before giving your best effort is one of the most common delusions. The truth is that effort reveals direction. When you fully commit to whatever is in front of you, one of two things happens quickly. Either opportunity expands or dissatisfaction becomes clear. Both outcomes are valuable. What wastes years is partial effort, half interest, and emotional disengagement. Pouring yourself fully into your current situation is not a trap. It is a diagnostic tool. It tells you whether you are in the right place or need to move on. Another silent destroyer is indecision. Indecision feels intellectual. It disguises itself as careful thinking, research, and preparation. But over time, it becomes mental paralysis. The inability to choose becomes a habit, and the habit becomes an identity. Many people spend years sitting on fences, believing that staying undecided protects them from mistakes. In reality, indecision creates its own cost. Time is spent without return. Energy is burned without movement. Confidence erodes because the mind starts to associate thinking with inaction. There is a truth most people resist accepting. There is no safe choice. Every direction contains risk. The only difference is how quickly you discover whether you need to adjust. Decision creates feedback. Indecision creates stagnation. A wrong decision made boldly teaches you more than 10 perfect decisions endlessly delayed, Life is not a test you pass by avoiding errors. It is an experience you deepen by making choices, correcting course, and learning faster than fear expects you to. Closely connected to indecision is doubt, especially self-doubt. Doubt is one of the most socially acceptable forms of self-destruction. People admire humility, so chronic self-doubt often goes unquestioned. But there is a difference between realism and disbelief in yourself. Self-doubt slowly convinces you that your efforts won't last, that your success is temporary, and that other people are somehow more equipped for achievement than you are. Over time, doubt becomes a lens through which every opportunity looks fragile and every ambition feels unrealistic. Belief is not arrogance. Belief is permission. When you believe in yourself, you give your mind permission to try fully, persist longer, and recover faster from failure. Progress does not begin with skill. It begins with self-worth. When you quietly believe you are capable of growth, your actions align with that belief. When you quietly believe you are limited, your actions protect those limits. The future does not reward potential. It responds to conviction expressed through behavior. Then there is worry, one of the most exhausting and unproductive habits the human mind can develop. Worry feels responsible. It feels like preparation. But worry produces nothing. It consumes energy without creating solutions. Prolonged worry weakens health, damages relationships, and shrinks perspective. It convinces you that mental suffering is the price of caring. But worry does not prevent pain. It only makes pain arrive earlier and last longer. Learning to live without worry does not mean living without challenges. It means separating what you can influence from what you cannot. Most worry comes from rehearsing futures that may never arrive. When you remove worry, you do not remove risk. You remove mental noise. And in that silence, clarity appears. Solutions emerge faster. Decisions feel lighter. Life becomes demanding but not overwhelming. Another form of self-sabotage hides behind the word caution. Caution sounds wise, but overcaution slowly teaches the mind that safety is more important than growth. It convinces you that avoiding loss matters more than pursuing gain. Over time, this mindset shrinks ambition until the goal becomes survival rather than fulfillment. The irony is that life itself is risky by default. Avoiding action does not avoid risk. It simply delays payment, and delayed costs are often higher. Everything meaningful carries uncertainty. Relationships, careers, creativity, investments, and personal growth all require exposure to discomfort. The cost of trying is visible and immediate. The cost of not trying is invisible but permanent. People who live cautiously often confuse comfort with security. But comfort does not build resilience. Adventure does. Growth does. Experience does. Pessimism is another deeply rooted habit that destroys potential. Pessimism trains the mind to search for flaws before possibilities. It feels intelligent because it anticipates problems. But when the mind becomes addicted to spotting what's wrong, it loses the ability to recognize what's right. Over time, pessimism creates a distorted reality where progress feels unlikely and effort feels pointless. Two people can face the same situation and experience completely different emotional outcomes, not because of circumstances, but because of interpretation. Your life is influenced less by events and more by how you explain those events to yourself. Thinking patterns are not neutral. They compound. What you repeatedly focus on becomes familiar, and what is familiar begins to feel true. Poor thinking habits keep people stuck far longer than poor working habits ever could. Most people are not underperforming because they refuse to work. They are underperforming because they have never trained their minds. Your mind operates like a factory. Whatever you feed it consistently becomes the raw material for your future. Thoughts, conversations, information, and media all shape the structure of your expectations. If you constantly consume negativity, fear, outrage, and hopeless narratives, you should not be surprised when optimism feels unrealistic. You cannot build a positive life using negative ingredients. This is why guarding your mental environment is not optional. It is foundational. What you read, listen to, and engage with daily programs your internal dialogue, and your internal dialogue eventually becomes your external behavior. Success is not just about what you do. It is about what you allow to influence how you think. Finally, there is one habit that quietly erases progress faster than almost anything else. Complaining. Complaining feels relieving in the moment. It creates temporary connection with others who share frustration. But it produces no forward motion. Complaining teaches the mind to externalize responsibility. It conditions you to see yourself as a victim of circumstance rather than a participant in change. 5 minutes of complaining does not just waste time. It reinforces a narrative of powerlessness. Every complaint is a withdrawal from your future. Energy spent explaining why things are unfair is energy not spent changing what you can control. This does not mean ignoring injustice or pretending everything is perfect. It means refusing to let frustration become an identity. Progress requires responsibility. Responsibility requires agency. And agency disappears the moment complaining becomes a habit. The war for your future is not fought in dramatic moments. It is fought quietly, daily, in how you think, decide, interpret, and respond. Every attitude you tolerate becomes a vote for the life you will eventually live. Success is not about avoiding mistakes. It's about eliminating the internal patterns that guarantee stagnation. When you remove indifference, indecision, doubt, worry, overcaution, pessimism, and complaint from your life, something powerful happens. Effort becomes meaningful. Direction becomes clearer. Confidence becomes quieter, but stronger. Winning the future is not about perfection. It's about awareness. Once you can see these patterns, you can interrupt them. And once you interrupt them, you reclaim momentum. The world is demanding, uncertain, and unforgiving, but it is also full of opportunity for those who refuse to sabotage themselves. The question is no longer whether life is risky. The question is whether you will live intentionally enough to make that risk worth it.